Well, I'm so thrilled to be here, and I'm so glad to be doing something for Marguerite's Place. We've heard so much about all the good work that you've been doing. So this is really a thrill for each of us. I think I speak for the whole team. So yes, I am the green piece. Now, I have 3 children, and when they were really small, one day they were watching TV. TVs used to be about this big back then. And I was walking through the living room, and I noticed that there was this little cartoon boy on the TV screen. He was a stick figure, and he was running across the screen, and he had these lines emanating from his knee. And he ran up to his mom, and he said, "Mom, Mom, I fell down, I hurt my knee." And Mom said, "Oh, honey, here's a cookie, you'll feel better." And you're laughing, but you know. So he looked at his mom and he said, "Mom, I said I hurt my knee. I didn't say I was hungry. I need a hug, Mom. I don't need a cookie." Now, isn't that awesome? Did any of you ever see that? You know, I've run into maybe 2 or 3 people that did see it. That came right off the air. You know why? The food industry. They want you to have that cookie. They don't want you to have that hug. So as a lot of you already know, I do work a lot with people that have emotional eating issues, people that are seeking life balance, but the food issues sometimes get in the way. Is there anybody here who has never ever been on a diet? We do have one. How old are you?
Turning 16 in April.
You're turning 16 in April and you've never been on a diet.
No.
I hope you never do.
I mean, like my friends at school would say, get a sub instead of pizza. I try it for one day. I'm back to pizza.
I don't know if you heard her. She said her friends will get a pizza and they'll say, no, a sub sandwich would be healthier. And she said, well, I'll do that once. Then I'm right back to the pizza. Diets cause weight gain. Diets are about deprivation. And what I've found, and I've been doing this work now for about 25 years, and what I've found is that one of the first things that you need to understand in order to move forward and get away from this craziness around body image and size and food and so forth, you have to have some understanding about where the issue came from. You can't know everything, but you can get a little bit of understanding. Many of us were invalidated when we were younger. Many of us were criticized. Some of us were abused, sexually abused, physically abused, emotionally abused. We all have our stories, don't we? In my family, one of the things that was paramount was we never talked about feelings. It was as if they did not exist. So if I went to my mother and I said, I feel this certain way, she would say something like, don't be silly, or you'll get over it, or other people have it a lot worse than you, you know. So if you lose your hand, somebody else loses their arm, it still hurts that you lost your hand. But there was a lot of invalidation. And I found this to be true of lots and lots of the people that I work with. So what happens when you're shut down like that as a child, often you'll discover, most of us did, sugar, carbohydrates, simple carbohydrates, and fat, especially the 3 in combination, will take away that pain. And you'll feel better temporarily. Now let me just give you a little example of how this can multiply over a lifespan, how this just feeds on itself, pardon the pun. But when I was small, and I felt very criticized by my mom, I felt humiliated, I felt invalidated, I felt ignored. You know, I also had an experience of running away because I thought, they're going to miss me. They're going to miss me. This is similar to what Deb was saying. I actually walked from Rye Beach, where I lived, into the heart of Portsmouth I was gone the entire day. After about 11 hours, I could barely stand up. I was exhausted. I said, well, by now, they're going to be so worried about me. They're going to just be so happy to hear from me. And like Deb said, they never knew I was gone. Unbelievable. Unbelievable. So here's one story that will illustrate how this can compound. I was probably, I'd say maybe 4. I was quite a little enterprising girl. And I was very physically fit, and I knew that I could go into the dining room, and if I pulled out one drawer and stepped on that, I could get on the counter, I could stand up, and I could reach way up high where my mother would put a candy dish when she was having company. So she would take this dish, I remember it like it was yesterday, and she would put what they called thin mints. I don't know if they still make them. Yes? They're little chocolate things. So she would fill this with thin mints, and these were to bring down at the end of dinner, put on the table, and the guests, after their meal, they could have a mint and talk with their coffee and so forth. Well, I knew the mints were there. And I always craved for sugar. It's very, very addictive for maybe not every person, but many, many people, certainly for me. So I would come into the dining room when nobody could hear me, pull out the drawer, step up onto the counter, stand up. Now I was only about this tall, but I could reach up in that dish and I could take a mint or 2 or 3, which I did throughout the day. To my horror, I realized somewhere around 3 or 4 in the afternoon, there was 1 mint in the dish. I thought they would probably notice. So my bed was down the hall. I was terrified. So I'm laying in bed and I'm under the covers and I'm waiting. And sure enough, the meal ends. My mother goes over to the buffet. I'm like, oh my God. Takes down the dish. Everybody laughs. My mother laughed. And my mother said, it had to be Denise. I flooded with shame. I was mortified, even though I was so small. But the feeling of that guilt, that shame, made me want more. And so it just kept increasing over the years. And this is why I ended up, certainly in my late adolescence and adult life, going through anorexia for years, bulimia for 7 years, extreme obesity for many years after that. And I was on the full spectrum, basically weighing half what I weigh now and twice what I weigh now at different times. And none of that was any fun. And it's not about being thin. It's not about being small. It's about enjoying your life. It's about having fun. It's about events like this, where you come together because you have an interest in positivity. You're here because you want to help other people. We want to help the people that use Marguerites. We want to do all that we can, and it feels good. And that's what life's all about, isn't it? Certainly not about every day getting on the scale, every day being worried if it went up or if it went down. You know, the scale, I just will mention, is quite a contraption. And it is a trap. You know, if you have a scale, I'm not going to ask how many of you do, but most people do. So you're standing there at the doorway of the bathroom, and there it is, the scale, right? Some of you can relate to this. So you look at it and you think, well, I wonder where I am in my weight today. So you come up to the scale, and when you're ready, you step onto the scale. But you don't step onto the scale until you've urinated, taken any bobby pins out of your hair. If you have false teeth, take those out. Make sure that you take off your glasses. If you have contacts, you take those out. You make sure that you clip your fingernails, shave your legs. You want to make sure that you are at the lowest possible weight. And then when you're standing there on the scale, you might want to rest a finger on the side of the sink just for balance. And don't tell me that you don't know what part of the bathroom floor will give you the lowest reading. I'm seeing you laugh, so I know you're with me, right? So finally, you've done all that preparation, and you look down. Now, if the scale went down, you think you're going to have a good day. If the scale went up, you think you're going to have a bad day. So, it saves a lot of trouble. Just go to the bathroom door, look at the scale, and say, tell me, am I going to have a good day or a bad day? Because it's really not up to me. It's up to you. Save a lot of trouble that way. The thing is, if the scale went down, you're going to be worried that it's going to go up the next day. So there's no freedom from this. It is entrapment. And it is important to pay attention because you do not deserve it. You don't deserve that at all. You deserve to have fun. I want you to have fun. I want you to empower yourself, as Deb was talking about, that you choose the best life, every aspect of it. Do what you want to do what you feel is good for you. Once you have some idea about where these food issues came from, then you can begin to do something about it. Now, I spent a long time really mad at my mother. She wasn't very nice to me. She really wasn't. She was very critical. She'd never listened to me. I remember one time she read me a story, one time in my life. I don't remember being hugged or held. I don't remember any of that affection. I don't remember her sticking up for me. I don't remember any of that. So I was really angry with her. But once you have an idea about where these issues started, just a general idea, then it's important to move beyond that to forgive. And it is important to forgive people. Now, I'm going to give you an example regarding my mom and one other example, just so that this is clear. Forgiving does not mean that what happened to you was okay. The way that my mother treated me was definitely not okay. Absolutely not. However, one day I was talking to her. She's going to be 92, by the way, in a couple of months. And I moved her up here from Florida a few years ago so that she could live up here in New England and be near me and I could keep an eye on her and take care of her. So I had always noticed that one of her fingers was bent at the top knuckle, almost at a right angle, quite a severe bend. But I never knew what happened to her. I never really cared, to be honest with you. I never asked her. So she came up here and I was helping her with unpacking, settling in. She was telling me great stories about her life. It was wonderful. And I said, by the way, Mom, what happened to your finger? I never asked you about that. As it turns out, my mother was accepted to the Boston Conservatory of Music, and she was an accomplished violinist. She was one of the best in the state of Massachusetts. She had a scholarship to the conservatory. She was all set to go. Senior year, she caught her hand in the car door. She went to my grandmother and she said, "Yipes, my finger," and it was mangled. And grandmother said, "Wrap it in a towel and walk down the hill to Dr. Delisle's office." By herself, with her mangled finger in a towel, she walked down the hill, it's at least a mile, by herself to the doctor's office. When I heard that story, because that was the end of her musical career, by the way. She never played the violin again, never could play the violin. When I heard that story, I felt a deep empathy for her. And all of a sudden I realized, if I'm going to be mad at her, then I have to be mad at her mother. And if I'm going to be mad at my grandmother, I have to be mad at her mother. So then I better be mad at her mother. Where does it stop? There's no way. And my anger dissolved. I have not felt angry with her in that way ever again.